The prince fell to the ground. At that moment, he saw a tail behind his stepmother. He wanted to tell his father, but his father had already been controlled by his stepmother. Facing his stepmother's domineering gaze, the prince sensed something was wrong. Then, the stepmother blew out a puff of green smoke. The smoke enveloped the prince, and his body began to shrink. He couldn't even hold his wooden sword anymore. The magic continued to affect the prince's body. Soon, he turned into a nutcracker doll. Then, he was kicked out of the window by his brother. From then on, the king became a puppet, and the stepmother took control of the entire kingdom. The nutcracker drifted along the river into the distance. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. A girl named Elsa accidentally awakened the prince on Christmas Eve. At this point, the prince remembered nothing, but when he saw a mouse hole, he immediately felt a surge of fighting spirit. So, he took Elsa, a goat, and a chicken, and returned to his kingdom. But now, the kingdom had been overrun by mice. The stepmother often patrolled the territory. When the prince and the others quietly entered the palace, they met his grandmother. The grandmother told him that to defeat the mice, they must find the national treasure, the magic flute, to save the kingdom. The prince and Elsa disguised themselves and sneaked into a ball. Here, humans had become servants to the mice. Though they were angry, finding the old king was their top priority, as only he knew where the magic flute was. But the old king remained unconscious. No matter how the prince called to him, he showed no response. Perhaps hearing his son's voice, the old king's hand suddenly twitched. A star-shaped badge fell off. The prince used the badge to open a mirror. Thinking the magic flute was inside, he instead found a file. As the prince reached for it, the file flew up on its own. In midair, it transformed into a glowing paper figure. The paper figure could even speak. It shared a lot of information. After organizing it, the prince concluded that the magic flute was hidden in an ancient tower. The prince and Elsa climbed into the tower using a rope, only to find it empty. There was no sign of the magic flute. Then, the paper figure appeared again, following its guidance. The prince lifted a rug on the floor, revealing a manhole cover. The two entered the deep well together, but halfway down, the stairs broke off. Below was a bottomless pit. Even the paper figure couldn't think of a solution, but determined to save his country, the prince insisted on jumping into the abyss. Unexpectedly, there were hidden steps beneath his feet. Following the glowing steps, they quickly reached the bottom-level chamber, and finally found the magic flute. They thought blowing the flute would make the mice flee, but that wasn't the case. As soon as the flute sounded, it awakened countless other magic flutes. Unable to tell which one was real, they had to try them one by one. After testing many flutes, they eventually collapsed from exhaustion. Faced with countless flutes, they felt overwhelmed. Then, Elsa suddenly noticed